Hey everybody, and welcome to this month's Underscore. Today we're going to be talking about how you can transform customer onboarding with education-led growth and AI. And you will hear from my friend here, Ramli John. So I'm going to introduce Ramli in a minute. If you've ever been on one of our webinars, you know we like to kind of get into the content, but just some quick housekeeping for this webinar in particular. So first of all, this webinar is being recorded. You will get a copy of the recording once the webinar is over. So you'll get an email with that webinar recording. The chat box is open, so if you Ramli already chatted in there, but if you want to say hello, let us know where you're calling in from, what you hope to learn today. We're here. We want to hear from you. That's part of what makes these really fun and more like community than just like talking virtually. But if you have questions specifically for Ramli as we're going, he's open to taking questions throughout the presentation. But if you use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, that's really helpful just to kind of stream the questions versus the chat. If you need access to closed captions, you can do that at the bottom of the screen. You can turn those on. And without too much further ado, I want to turn it over to Ramli. So I met Ramli through the product-led growth community a number of years ago. And so he wrote the book back then. He was working on product-led growth. He wrote product-led onboarding. He's written a couple books since then, just came out with a new book on how B2B SaaS companies can like reduce churn and work on customer onboarding. And he's going to be sharing some of those insights today, and had an opportunity to read that book kind of as it was being developed, and then talking about how to use customer education as part of customer onboarding and the role that customer education plays. So really excited for you to hear from Ramli. I find him to be one of the most practically helpful, applicable. So I think when you end the webinar, you will have some very tactical steps that you can take next and apply within your own organization. So looking forward to you hearing from him. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ramli.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon. Yeah, and thank you. I think you kind of went over that quickly. You provided a quote for one of the chapters in the book, so thank you. Shannon's in the book. People don't know that. Yeah, and like Shannon mentioned, we go way back. I think that was 5 years ago. I was working with Wes. I just want to thank you, Shannon, for inviting me. For all the folks here, I'm looking at the chat. So we got Nick from Pennsylvania, Paige from Washington, Chris from Florida. So let us know where you're joining us from today. Like I mentioned, I'm excited to dig in, and thank you so much. I'm going to start off with one of the most unexpected places where I learned about onboarding and education. It's actually from a game that I'm obsessed with, and that's obviously Super Mario Kart. As a kid, I was so obsessed with it. This is me and my brother, my younger brother, Mark, and we would play Super Mario Kart late into the night at our parents' basement to their annoyance because we would wake up late for school the next day. And us growing up, we just got so addicted with the sounds and the graphics and just the competitiveness. And one of the things that really annoyed me about that experience was that my brother, younger brother, always was beating me so many times, and it just broke my mind because there's this law in the universe that I believe in. And before I share that, I'd just love to see how many of you here are the big brother or sister in your siblings. Yes, just type yes if you are. I'm gonna say yes. All right, how many of you are the younger one? You're the younger sibling, and then maybe just young. I'm not sure. All right, so I see some people. Younger one, okay. Younger team. I see some folks. Shannon, you're the younger one. Some of, yeah, and that law that I like to call the older sibling law is that the older brother or sister always has to beat the younger one. And I know, okay, I'm seeing Shannon said not, and it might break the law of this universe, gravity, thermodynamics, and the law of big brother or sister is if the younger one wins, it's like, man, something's breaking. And in my head at that age, it wasn't making sense. So I had to figure this out. I had to figure out how to crack this code. And so I started watching my brother and this experience because I was very upset about this. And this is my face that why do I keep losing? I started watching my brother in that basement, and I just watched him while eating my popcorn. And in that basement, I was just like, huh. So I looked over to his screen, and there's this green, red, yellow, green. It says bing, bing, bing. And right before the light turns green, he would press a button, and I couldn't figure it out. But it's something that I realized later is called the rocket start, where if you press the button at the right time, you actually get a head start. And I still couldn't figure out what is he doing. And I had to bribe him with a month's worth of my chores, of his chores. So now he's doing double the amount of chores to try to figure out how he is able to do this. And he just told me that if you press the button at the right time, a few seconds before it turns green, you actually get a head start, a rocket start with your competitors. And this lesson applies to Super Mario Kart, but I've come to realize growing up now that in my adulthood and work life is that this applies to so many things. It applies to how that small thing in the very beginning can make a big impact at the end. Things like networking events or dates or interviews. And I want to tie this back to customer experience, is that something so small in the beginning can really set up our customers for long-term success. And I really do believe that that is the experience we're building together in customer education, but my bread and butter that people know me for around onboarding is where it really becomes super, super crystal clear. I dedicated my whole career, the last 10 years, on this idea that that small thing in the beginning can make a big impact in the long-term success. I wrote 2 books about it, as Shannon mentioned, the Product-Led Onboarding book and now Eureka. I've gotten a chance to work with some amazing companies about this. And one of the things that I've come to realize is when people think about onboarding, is they often approach it from the wrong way. And let me explain this. Usually when I hear, oh, now let's work on our onboarding. Let's improve our onboarding. And specifically, I work mainly with B2B teams. Is that, okay, they're trying to really get all of this going. They try to increase their child to paid conversion and churn and revenue expansion. All of this actually starts in that very, very beginning of that onboarding experience. And before I do share that mistake, I want to share why it's important, why I dedicated my career on this. Onboarding, people can see, like, if you can make that big impact in that first few moments, people stick around longer, right? There's some data from Intertrends that if you can lift and really engage a new customer in that first week, within the week 9 and week 10, there's actually an increase of 2 to 3 times higher that they're more likely to stick around. This is a retention curve where they looked at what the retention curve looks like if the user or customer didn't complete the onboarding versus one that did. And they obviously stuck around longer. And we know this instinctively, but it's cool to see data around it. There's also data that from ProfitWall that great onboarding experiences, that first few moments can really make people stick around, and not just stick around, but also they're more willing to pay. And they're more likely to, not just pay first time, but actually pay a longer time, and maybe even upgrade to higher tier plans, which is something that Salesforce also found in their study, that those who successfully complete that experience, that onboarding experience, are 34% higher customer lifetime value, because, as you've seen, they're more likely to upgrade to higher tier plans and different things like that. And this is all great, right? When I share this, I see a lot of head noddings, like, oh, obviously this makes sense. But let me share with you that mistake that I always see a lot of teams do, is when they're like, okay, cool, we got it, it makes sense. One of the first things that I find teams do is they lean into the product team, right? They talk about, oh, let's look at better UX and maybe improve our documentation and maybe add more tutorials here and there, and maybe provide clear navigation and technical setup. And often these teams do this, and then they come to me and it's like, and just to go back to my Super Mario fandom, it's like Mamma Mia, Super Mario would say, is that why isn't this working, right? Why isn't this working Why is it still not lifting up? And one of the things that I found studying and working with different B2B teams is that the biggest barrier to B2B onboarding isn't product friction. It's often human resistance. It's this resistance to change, this resistance to transformation, because that's truly what onboarding is about. It's about changing the way that they do things to how they do it, that they should do it with your product. And that requires them pulling out habits that they form and really building new ones, which for us in our work, even us in our life, change is scary, right? Change is something that we often say, oh, change is good, but our human instinct is like, let's stick with what we know, and change is often the barrier to onboarding it and change. And that's where, in my study and work with different companies, I found that there's actually three types of friction. There's three types of friction that your customer will face if you're fully trying to get them to adopt your product. And the very first one is often what a lot of people think about, and it's table stakes. It's make sure your product is working, right? There's no bugs there. UX is good. Obviously, like that's table stakes, right? In this world of AI and product-led growth, your product has to work and it has to be easy to use. But I find, like I mentioned, in B2B, it's not product friction that's often the barrier. It is human resistance, and human resistance comes in two flavors. The first one is around social friction. This is the idea that when you're trying to introduce a product to an organization, that there's social structures and processes, and maybe there's red tape, and maybe there's politics within your customer's organization that you need to help them get buy-in. Not just buy-in, but help them become champions so that they would advocate for your product. They would advocate for your solution internally, so that more people get bought in and they upgrade to higher tiers. That's what I call the social friction. At the highest level is emotional friction. This is where fear and doubt and anxiety about change really show up. Ideas like, what if this product that I brought into my organization or company that we bought for $100,000 for the year, and it ends up not producing the results that they promised? In that situation, your job might be on the line, right? Which is not something that you would want. Like there's a reason why back then, how many of you heard a saying that you can never go wrong buying IBM, or you can never go wrong buying Salesforce? Is because there's a sense of emotional security in that saying, that you can't, there's less fear and doubt, not because it's a better product, but because it's more socially accepted and more emotionally safe to buy products that a lot of people use. There's a reason why, going on a study by Sixth Sense found that 76% of B2B buyers, if they have a great onboarding and buying experience, they're more likely to buy them again when they move to another job, right? There's a reason why people who love Intellum, they go to another job, they bring the same product, right? I'm seeing Shannon's head nodding, and it was the same for other companies, because it's not just a great product, it's socially accepted, right? You've already used it before, and it's emotionally safe. And that's all of this kind of ties back to the point that I have here, that the biggest barrier to B2B onboarding isn't necessarily product. It's the human barriers, that social friction and that emotional friction. And obviously I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe that one of the solutions and the approach and the way to overcome this human barrier is customer education, right? It's one of the ways to tackle all three types of this friction, this B2B friction. Because when you educate user, you actually make them successful. And I tie back this friction model to actually a success model. And I believe that similarly, how education can create three types of successes, right? There's, first of all, the functional success. And that's the idea that if I was educating, creating a program for my customers, that one of the things that one of your goals potentially is to help them get the most out of the product. That's the functional success, right? How to get the most out of your product so it makes their job easier or better, or potentially get the ROI that they want. That's the first level of the success, right? You want this. This is like table stakes. You want them to achieve that ROI, that whatever you promised them, your sales team promised them. Above that is a similarity, is actually social success, right? I've seen great academy programs where education programs where it doesn't just make them functionally better as an employee, but they actually start looking good. And that's where badges and certification comes in, where you're leveling up your credibility and your value to the organization so that it doesn't just make you do your job better, but it actually makes you look good to your peers and your colleagues. So that's social success. And at the highest is emotional success, which is like really tying back to the idea that it makes you feel positive emotions, confidence, and professionalism. It makes you feel that you are actually progressing. And I find that a lot of academies, that customer education teams that does this, they really think about this across the board. What does success look like for my customer? And not just like functionally, but socially and emotionally. And the problem often is that I see teams do customer education wrong, where and it might not be the customer education, it could be the leadership team, where they see education as a support function. Like it's more reactive, where like, okay, we're using our education programs to reduce support tickets, which is good, but also there's other layers to it. How do you make them feel like they're actually looking good in front of the peers? Some of them are one size fits all, and there's a disconnect from customer education from business outcomes. And I don't want to get in too deep about it, but the team at Intellum has created this education-led growth framework where they really break down how to the different components, the 7 core pillars that work together to build a really good education program. And they have some content around it. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to go too far deep into it. Just shout out to I saw Anderson and Shannon talk about it in a previous webinar, but kind of tying back the programs to your outcomes, to your audience, your initiative, to your resources and delivery, your marketing, and also to your measurement, and kind of pulling it all together. I want to go back to what my specialty is, which is around onboarding. So how does customer education fit into onboarding? So I've talked about the challenges, the friction, and how education can kind of overcome those friction itself. The way that I see education fit in, there's actually, I call the 3 pillars. Once again, looking at companies that I've worked with, I find that ones that have scaled up their onboarding have 3 pillars, three categories that they usually excel in. And the 3 categories or pillars that they have for successful onboarding in B2B, the first one is around in-product experience. Obviously, that's when people think about onboarding, they usually go there. Things like interactive walkthroughs or tooltips or contextual help. The second one is often what's forgotten, and how valuable and important it is around the educational content. Things like courses and academies and tutorials and knowledge base really come into play, because another way I think about onboarding is that it is an educational challenge. How do you make this more bite-sized so that people learn how to use your product, but how to really excel at it as well? And the third one is around human touch points, and really figuring out how different humans kind of, whether there's customer success or customer onboarding touch point there. And all 3 of this need to come together to really create that experience that is seamless, and it totally makes sense for different folks as well. And how this works, and how do you build a kind of flow or experience strategy around this? The book I have, the new book that I have, the Eureka, is actually a framework that is an acronym. And there's actually 5 things there that when I'm helping a team think about their onboarding, and not just from in product, but holistically across education, as well as their human touch points, is really this 5 steps. The first one is to think about onboarding as a cross-functional challenge that really sales and marketing and product and education and customer success really have to come into there, because if you look at these 3 pillars, it's across the board, right? There's product and design in the first pillar, then there's education and marketing in the second pillar, and then the third is around customer success and more like customer onboarding as well, or it could even be support. And there's the 3 pillars is really truly cross-functional, and that's one of the first thing I do is to try to bring this together in virtual room, kind of to tie it back to the second point, which is around understanding user and customer success. And funny enough, that's also the second step in the education-led growth approach or framework, is that understanding your audience. And I'm really talking about going back to that functional, social, emotional success. What does that look like for your customer? How do you truly define that? Because that can help you think beyond just like, okay, what are they trying to do? How do we want them to be perceived by their colleagues and their peers or their bosses? How do we want them to feel after they've gone through this program or completed this step? Because that's something that you have to design and bake into whatever programs that you have. The third, which we're going to go through and I'm going to share a template about, is to reverse engineer that journey to success. This is where I actually think about kind of mapping out the whole customer journey step by step, and what is the end goal, and kind of working backwards to what they're trying to do as well. The fourth is around keeping new users or new customers engaged. And this is where I look at that customer journey map and break down where the potential friction and challenges they might have. The 3 types of frictions I mentioned, the functional, the emotional, and social friction that they might have. And the final is kind of just to repeat this over and over again as a continuous feedback to really improve that as well. I know this is a high level overview. Like I mentioned, I go further into it, but I wanted to share 2 practical takeaways today that you can take, and like within the first tomorrow, let's say, but maybe not tomorrow, tomorrow's Friday, if you want to, next week, right, that you can take away and kind of start thinking about how to apply this to your education programs or to your customer journey. The very first one that I really encourage people to do is not just to map out their journey, but actually what I do is map out the friction in that journey as well. I have this template that I use, and the idea being that I go through after you map out each of the things that you want your customers to do, would be like, what are some potential functional friction that they might have? What are challenges that they might have in how they do that thing? What are some social friction that they might have? Things that require them to connect with somebody else? And what are some potential emotional friction that they might have? So challenges that they might have around fear and doubt, especially things that require huge commitment, where they have to upload some kind of data, or they might have to set up something that requires a lot of barriers internally as well. So what are those things? And kind of breaking down where all of those things are can really help you start thinking about where potential solutions, potential courses as well, potential directions that you might have. And this is really a great way to kind of audit your experience and find as a team where those challenges are. Like I said, I'm going to be sharing a template with all of you very shortly as well. The second thing that I've actually been playing around with and working with different teams is actually creating something I call an AI co-pilot. And you can use this for onboarding, but you would just plug, like I'm gonna give this prompts out to you. You can use this in ChatGPT or whatever LLM that you use. I use Claude, and it has this specific prompt. I work at this company. You're an expert on onboarding coach, and I'm going to provide some details and strategies and target customers and product information and market insights and customer research and analytics and transcripts. And the real true magic of this AI Copilot is not necessarily this prompt, but the context that you give it. And this is where the magic comes in, where you would get your product team to, and you could even do it, is go get product documentation and user research and recording transcripts and product analytics data and then plug that into this Copilot. Next is that you can also go to your team and get those brand guidelines, those tone documentation that you have around your brand. You can also do any kind of brand or messaging documents that you have available, or even positioning messaging, and upload this into this Copilot. You can get your customer success to get any kind of onboarding transcripts that they might have, any challenges, common support requests that they might have from best fit customers, any knowledge-based articles that they might have as well. And once again, plug this to this Copilot. And then finally, I also enjoy, not that I enjoy, but I think there's value in really uploading sales call transcripts as well. Where are those aha moments where people are getting really excited, and upload that there as well. What you can really do now is you have this almost second brain for this Copilot that you can start asking it, and it has the context of your company and your customers, and what are the common struggles. You can ask it the common struggles of your customer segment, and you can ask it to brainstorm academy programs or courses, because now it has the context of your particular company and product, and help you like build even personalized learning paths based on the friction that it sees in the in-product experience, or even during those onboarding calls as well. And of course, I would really enjoy if you guys would take this. I put this all together in this this resource that is ungated. So there's actually no email required for this, that you can get at delightpath.com/Intellum. So that's the AI Copilot, the customer journey friction mapping process that you can take, and there's a Figma and Miro template there as well. And then of course, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have a Super Mario video. There's actually a video of this impossible level where like there's multiple fire going around, and I share this in this document because it is what a lot of onboarding feels like, a lot of customer experience look like. And I'm happy to actually just drop this in the chat as well here. I think I can drop it there. And of course, I also have a discount code for my new book, but it's not over. I actually wanted to give away a book here, a signed copy of my book to the audience here. We're gonna play a game. I actually enjoy games, and I like delighting folks. That is, so we're gonna play a game, and the game is wrong answers only. And I'm actually gonna ask Shannon to pick the winner here very shortly. So I'm gonna send a signed physical copy to the winner of this. And the game is called Wrong Answers Only, and the way that it works is that I'm gonna share a prompt. You have 1 minute, right? And if you can give the best wrong answers only to this prompt, the person Shannon picks will be the one who will get a signed copy here today. And the prompt here, and just feel free to type it in the chat here, is what is the best way to create a customer education program for new users? So what is the best way? And obviously, wrong answers only, right? Like, what is the best way? Maybe I can prompt you, Shannon. What is the best way? Wrong answer.
What is the best way to create a customer education program for new users? I think you went over some of them earlier, like create one size fits all content. Just maybe point out every feature in your product would be really helpful for most people, I think. So tell them everything that you want them to know.
Awesome. Anybody can get inspired and type that in the chat and win a copy of the book.
Oh,
Yeah.
here we go. Okay. This is good. Sometimes you need some time to type, and that's good. Okay. Chris said, do it without learning from the customer, learning about the customer. So we have no understanding of our customers, and we're creating education for them. Amy said, dump all your user manuals, FAQs, technical documentation into a single unsearchable PDF, email it to them.
Oh, that's so good. Oh my goodness.
I feel the pain. I feel the pain. Yes.
Just
Tamara
let
said,
them.
just name all the features and what they do, not what they'll bring to your new customers. So we're just talking about, I call this like when someone comes to your house, right? Like I think about onboarding in very real environments. So I
Right.
said to someone the other day, when someone comes to your home for dinner, you probably show them the dining room where you're going to eat. You show them the kitchen where they're going to put their food down and where the bathroom is, but you probably don't show them every closet. You don't got to show them every room in the house, you know?
That's
Um,
true.
Marianne said, let them figure it out themselves. And I do think, unfortunately, a lot of people do that. Copy and paste what your competitors do. Ben, out. Make them figure it all out. Nick said they don't have customer education. Kavisha said you really should know this. Paul said to ask the CEO. April said, make everything a pop-up you can't skip. Randy, I'm sure that you have seen
I've
this.
seen that. Yeah.
Steve said ransomware until they set up every feature.
Oh, that's
Brutal.
fun. Yeah.
Sophia said, ask your 5-year-old what they want it to look like and build that.
Oh my goodness. Imagine it built with crayon.
Kate said, go through all of your shredded documents, tape those back together, give it to the customer. Gabrielle, text only info. Laura, wait until you start getting lots of customer complaints, then only answer specific questions with no structure or organization and slap it on your website. Ooh, Paige, send them a different feature every day with multiple GIFs, images, help center articles, FAQs, CTA buttons. Do not consider anything you know about the customer. One size fits all. Timing does not matter. It's like throw it all at them all.
That's so
Uh,
beautiful.
okay, do what you or someone else did for the previous product. That's real. Immediately start upselling without explaining what they've already purchased. That is also, look, Ramli, I'm sure you've seen that too, because you work with a lot of like B2B SaaS.
Yeah. I see that all the time.
Okay. All of these are really good and good in the sense of very bad. Very bad. But I think, and if anybody has any last minute things to add in, someone's raising their hand. Esther, if you want to type yours in. Oh, Shivani, lock all the helpful features behind a riddle. If they solve it,
Oh
they
my
unlock.
goodness. That's
I
funny.
mean, adding a riddle would maybe be fun. But not if not if people can't get started. I do think that the winner for me is going to have to go to Amy, who said
Amy.
all of your user manuals, FAQs,
Yeah.
documentation into a single unsearchable PDF. Email it to them one time and hope they figure it all out. Yeah, I feel like that's the worst way for sure.
Okay, Amy, congrats. That's exciting. Feel free to please send my team an email, book@delightpath.com, or send me an email to ramli@delightpath.com, and I'll get it. Congrats, Amy. I appreciate everybody who contributed. That's always fun. It's always a hit. Wrong answers
Mhm.
only. That was thank you. Thanks, Shannon. I appreciate you. That's all I wanted to share for today. And I just wanted to make sure that you get all the links, delightpath.com/Intellum. And that includes my LinkedIn and also this 20% off discount I was able to get for the team from my publisher that you can get if you wanted to check out my book at that link that I just attached is also in that link, delightpath.com/Intellum. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have, or I'm gonna pass it off to Shannon if you wanted to ask about anything.
Yeah. Well, I just want to call back to earlier, you were talking about different types of friction. And I think actually for anyone who is in past webinars, people have said, okay, like obviously as an education person, I understand how important education is, but maybe one of the biggest blockers for people is the product team or the CEO saying, well, our product's so easy, it's so simple, it's so intuitive. Like, why would I need education? And I think you answered that. Like, yes, make the product easy, intuitive, simple. But you also need to teach people how to use things, right? And I think you've probably even shared some of these memes of like a shopping cart, but someone's using it totally wrong. Like 99% of people use a shopping cart the way that shopping carts were intended to be used. And then there's that weird 1% that just came up with a really creative, clever, not at all intended way to, to use a shopping cart.
100%. Yeah.
And that's where education is helpful, which
Yeah.
education doesn't have to be a structured course. It could just be modeling.
Yeah.
What does it look like to use a shopping cart? Yeah, so floor is open for any
Yeah. I think the
any
other thing I'd add to that is like it's education is great for teaching people how to use a product like a shopping cart, but like it'd be cool to like level it up and like what are the social success? Like what how do you make those people who complete that course or watch that video feel like they won something? They feel like celebrated, right? They feel whether there's badges or things like that, building space for people who have completed things and how do you make them look good as well? And that ties back to some great programs that I've seen provide like LinkedIn certifications, which you're making them not not just functionally successful, but socially successful and emotionally successful too. And that's where the true power is. Like if the leadership team is just like, oh, let's just teach them how to use the product, um,
Mm-hmm.
there's like different ways to do that, but emotional and social is like where I think education really shines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the how do I make someone look really good, right? Which, and I think if we think about customer education in the broader context, true customer education is not just product education. It's not how do you use this, it's also understanding, right? So like right now, everybody's talking about AI. There's how do you use an AI product, but then there's also how do you think about AI? How do you
Yeah,
integrate AI into your workflow flows? Because I can teach you one specific point solution thing or one prompt, but if I can teach you how to think, right? And I think that's where education can be so helpful. It's like reframing thinking. Okay, so someone had a question. How do you manage the privacy, data protection, confidentiality restrictions of uploading company and customer data into AI? Do you anonymize? And I think this is around the prompting here.
Copilot. Yes, yes. I to that person, I would suggest that, especially with ones that you don't fully trust. Some people don't fully trust ChatGPT. I know they have updated their I think their user agreement and maybe even seek. And I think if that's the case, I would definitely anonymize the data there and kind of hide the name and company as well. And if they don't have that context, that's totally fine as well, as long as you're providing it information. Like I think that's a lot of the prompts that I see. There's like, oh, here's the prompt, cool. Like a really smart guy that I watch. His name is Tel Raviv. Is like, intelligence is not the limitation of AI at the moment. It's context, and if you can provide a context, even anonymized context, then you're actually making it smarter and provide um, more specific and actionable advice, co-pilot advice for you. So I think that's I totally agree.
I like that. I think that actually goes back to one of the wrong answers around just creating education with no understanding of someone's context, right? Like you could ask ChatGPT that prompt of how should I
Right.
create onboarding for my product, and it'll give you some probably really great but generic
Exactly.
advice versus, hey, here's my product, my company, the common support questions, here's some sales call transcripts, like all of this contextual data. So then it's thinking about, okay, with these best practices in mind, in this context in mind, what is the best answer?
You got it. Yeah. Love that.
Any specific tips to address social friction?
I would say it's like really deeply understanding where that social friction is coming up from. So like, is it coming from politics in the company, or is it coming from them fearing like they're unsure about where they need to fit in, or how? And really like the solution to social friction is thinking about how do I make this user look good in front of their peers? Like how do I not just thinking about product, but like your marketing, your customer education program. And I got a chance to watch and listen to the head of marketing at Clay talk about how they blew up Clay. It's so quickly in 2 years, and he was like, that was his singular focus in the first 2 years. How do I make my customer look like the champion in their company and
Mm,
externally as well in LinkedIn? And that could be providing them resources on how to sell the product up and sharing the bullet points or proving out the ROI of your product or like really like making them feel be seen as the one who's making the solution and moving the needle. And sometimes it does require a little bit of coaching, one-on-one, and then in terms of education program, you can really like that's where I think about badges and certificates and how do you get them to be proud enough to like share that in the Slack channel in their team, right? It's like, oh, I just completed this. All of you should sign up for this as well. So that's how I think about it. I know it's a generalized advice. If you wanted to share something more specific, I'm happy to share that.
Okay. Maybe going along with the social friction, um, actually the first step of the Eureka framework is to establish a team, right? And you mentioned this is a cross-functional team. Do you have recommendations for how to establish this cross-functional team? Because some companies have already pre-established ways that cross-functional teams work together, but sometimes there's not. And so you're knocking down doors and building bridges. What have you found to be successful in actually establishing that team?
Yeah, I actually take a onboarding approach to this. Like, what is the smallest step? In I think in I forgot what chapter it was. I talk about how there's three levels. You probably noticed I like three. Sounds like a round number. There's three levels to thinking about that onboarding team. You start off with more impromptu and ad hoc, and finding people who are bought into the idea of onboarding already in the other teams, and kind of asking them for advice and sharing what you're working on with them already, and kind of like creating a small um, group of advisors from other things. The next level up is really thinking about it from a short-term play, and this requires some leadership team buy-in, where once you've proved out something is working, would be to create like a tiger team, with like a smaller team. Um, Usually there would be like a leadership kind of sponsor who would be like, yeah, this is a good idea, and you form this for 3 to 6 months. When I was working at AppQs, that's where what we did for 6 months is like really focus on this one specific thing, which is around activation, and how we had somebody from marketing, which I was part of, thinking about how to use content and education to like help move the needle there, and then somebody from product was thinking about in product, and then customer success, somebody from customer onboarding team was thinking about it as well. So I would think about it in what it's the advice I got from a previous mentor is like, what is the smallest action you can do right now to make that happen? And often is if there's nothing, it's finding people in other departments and functions and building that almost like advisory board. I know that people talk about customer advisory board, but
Yeah.
if you had like a product advisory or an onboarding advisory or even a customer education advisory board that you can kind of like bounce ideas off and get some advice from different perspectives would be super valuable.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Are there any companies you feel are doing customer education well? And I know you have an answer for this because you put them in the book.
Yeah, obviously you guys are doing a good job of this. Well, that's one. Obviously, people think about HubSpot all the time. Like I'm trying to think of one that I was surprised off would be something like Slack, where traditionally they think about, oh man, they're so easy. It's product-led growth. They don't need education. Like the product's so easy. They actually have a very robust like education for admins, right? For when they started moving up market. They first of all hired a lot of salespeople. That was the other people didn't think about. Oh, Slack's product-led growth. They don't. They actually have a large sales team that they're a public company, so they have it in their filing. And the second is that because of that, they created like an admin, Slack admin community and training program, and they have it for different levels as well. So that's one that surprised me. Obviously, HubSpot has been the standard. They have certifications for different things, and they think about that hierarchy of success. I actually got inspired by somebody who used to work there, and like thinking about how not just education as a way to teach people how to use a product, but how do you truly build community and belongingness and feel like they're actually leveling up their career in learning skills that they would be proud to show off to others is, well, I was inspired by that.
Was that Chris?
Yeah, obviously. Chris, yeah, she's awesome. Chris La Dolce. Yeah, he's a good dude. Yeah.
Yeah. He and Lindsay, they were on
Oh,
a webinar with us last month,
yeah.
and just really the way that they think about customer education is very holistic, or they really think more about transformational education.
Yeah.
How do we actually use this to transform minds, thinking, workflows, not just get people to adopt a product, but even that social impact that you were talking about. All right, the last question we have, and if anybody else has questions, please drop in the chat. I also dropped a link to next month's webinar. We're going to be walking through how to prove the impact of your education program. So if you are trying to wrangle data and you're wondering, like, how do I actually do this? We're going to walk through that step by step. We're going to actually wrangle data and find ways to do that, even if we have to get creative. So we're going to do that next month. Amy had a question around any predictions for the future of AI in customer education. I'll let you
Yeah.
go.
I should ask you. What are your thoughts, Shannon? And I can share my thoughts because you're like really like thinking about this a lot.
Yeah, I think in the near term, I think a lot of the wins for customer education are some of those more like, how do we incorporate it into our workflow? How do we get it to help us with content, help us to outline things, create learning objectives, or everybody's favorite assessments? How do we like use it? I mean, I teach college students and I'll like take all of my notes and then have it create an outline, like a class outline for me. So I think there's some like probably Gen AI advancements in the near term. Longer term, I think we're looking at a totally different way of doing education, right? So, Ramli, you were talking earlier about like taking a one size fits all approach. It was also like one of the wrong answers in the chat was taking a one size fits all approach. There's just no humanly possible way for any person or team to personalize education and training for every single
Yeah.
learner across the board, right? And so maybe we have like globalized, localized programs. Maybe we have those tiers, like you're talking about, different types of users, but to actually really truly personalize is going to be impossible for any person to do. But AI can do that, right? It can understand who's Ramli, what courses or training has he
Yeah.
done before? Has he done any courses or training before? Like, what's his role in his company? What is he trying to do with the product? And it's going to be able to tailor all of that to the individual learner. And so then I think we'll see like advances on the content like creation side. How do we personalize learning for the learner? And then also like I think for years we've been asked to do more with less. And I hate that because
Mm,
my thing is like bake more cakes with less ingredients, come back to me, tell me how that worked out for you.
that's good.
Right? Like you can't actually do more with less. I think you have to do better with less. But AI actually does allow us to effectively do more with less. And I think that's going to change kind of how we work, how we operate, figuring out how do we make AI a colleague.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts based on your
Yeah, I
work?
think your point about personalization, I've heard it called hyper personalization, where like it's like you just imagine like, hey, what are you like you mentioned like what are you here, Emily? What are your goals? And then it kind of takes a modular approach and builds a training program for you, right? Specific to you. That's something that you meant, yeah, like a human coach is there kind of building it for that specific person or that company specifically and kind of scaling that up, which is so then somebody's training program is totally different from somebody else's, and you can have like a million iterations depending on the different types of companies or users you work with.
Mm-hmm. Which would be really neat to be able to personalize to that level where I think sometimes the thing that can be so difficult with education and training is people will come to the same training and some people will say this was way too beginner and basic and other people
Mm.
will say this is too advanced and I don't know how to do this. And even if you give it a label of intermediate, you're still going to get all over the board. So then if AI can help us to really hyper personalize, I think you meet more people really where they're at, give them exactly what they need, not more, not less. Wouldn't that be cool?
That
So
would
I
be
think
so cool.
that's the exciting thing that we get to like look forward to and work toward. But we'll be talking more in the coming months. everybody about AI and how do you use it? How are other people using it? Because I know maybe 2 years ago, I was hosting roundtables and we were talking about AI. And at that point, it was kind of like, anybody who's using it? Do it. And there was like one guy
Yeah.
with
Right.
at Google who was like doing some cool stuff. And then everybody else is kind of waiting for legal approval. But now it's actually it's here and it's now, and we get to do some cool stuff. And then someone said, was it AI has never been dumber than it will never be dumber than it is right now. Probably
That's
butchering
good.
that. I tend to
Yeah.
butcher quotes, but yeah, that it will only improve from here. So that's the exciting thing. Awesome. Well, guys, sign up for next month's webinar on metrics. Check out that link that Ramli posted in the chat to check out the book and the resources and the Copilot and the map too, because that will be really helpful. And then go follow. I'm going to pop Ramli's LinkedIn in here. So I mentioned earlier, and if you joined us late, Ramli is someone I really appreciate because what he shares is very well researched and actionable, right? So when you think about like, what can I actually do with this information? Ramli provides that 10 times out of 10. So I'd encourage you to go follow him. Also, he creates some killer memes about product onboarding. So if you're also just looking for a good laugh when you're on LinkedIn, go ahead and follow him. And then Amy, yeah, make sure that you get a copy of the book.
Yeah.
But Ramli, thank you so much for your time, for walking us through this. For everybody in the call, thanks for taking your time to join us, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Shannon.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye.